Okay, we are ready to go.
Perfect. All right, you guys let me know if you can see a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, well, hello, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Mariah Nath, and I work with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and I manage our Rural Economic Development Initiative, which we refer to as READY, R-E-D-I. So you'll see that acronym throughout the few slides I have here today. But really excited to be here. We've been doing a lot of great work with some libraries around the state already, and hopefully we'll get to do more and get introduced to some folks today and after this meeting. So I will dive in. Did you guys see a screen switch?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So what is the READY program? So basically this program was created by the Vermont State Legislature back in 2017 with the goal of helping small rural communities in Vermont that are often, really relying on a lot of volunteer support or folks wearing many hats in their communities to help them access very complex funding sources and often federal funding sources to bring that funding into the state of Vermont. So how do we do that? We have small grant awards that we put out to eligible clients to fund consulting services. So often that is in the form of helping folks with kind of identifying funding sources that are out there, mapping out opportunities and what may be a best fit for a given project in a particular area, seeing which sources can match which. And also, a big core of our work is hiring on consulting services for grant writing. So specifically that consultant can work with, a community or an eligible client basically on developing that grant application and all of the different pieces that go with that. And we can also support technical assistance that's critical to a funding application. So as I know, probably many folks are on the call are looking at some different library funding that's coming down the line, whether in the form of energy efficiency or kind of capital improvements. There might be some needs for some assessments prior to applying to those grants, and working with consultants that do those type of assessments, whether they be environmental, archaeological, sometimes historic preservation assessments are needed. READY funds can also go toward those type of services as long as there's a direct tie to being necessary to applying for a funding application. Our program works all across Vermont, and really the main eligibility criteria there is that our small rural definition for this program is populations of 5,000 or less. That can also, there might be a village center designation, or, if unincorporated areas, we can talk about that. But generally those places can be eligible as well, as long as they fit under that 5,000 population definition. We also see projects that serve multiple communities. So, in total that may, eventually go over 5,000, but as long as those communities are majority under 5,000 people, we can work in those areas as well. And this is just to note that also the READY program, we're a small but mighty program, and we work really well with all of the folks that you'll hear from on this call and probably in prior presentations that Joy has hosted. So just to note that please connect with all of us, and that we're kind of a small piece of the puzzle, because often these projects are pretty significant and complex and require lots of different support systems and funding resources. And we're here to be, a team player along that journey. So as far as also kind of some other eligibility factors that are important to note, and this will be a little bit broader than kind of what we're talking about specifically focused on libraries today, but this program was created to really focus on economic development in these sectors. So the working land sector, that's farm, food, and forest-based business here in Vermont, outdoor recreation, as well as a broader category of community-based economic development. So that's thinking about, community infrastructure, where libraries would fall like kind of directly in there, but also childcare, community centers, harder infrastructure like water and wastewater as well is a fit for this program. And then it's important for us to note that also our focus area is really on helping folks access funding that is federal, outside of the state of Vermont, and bring it in, or otherwise complex sources, but also specifically for kind of the implementation of that project. So in the case where we have a lot of projects coming in, those will be the areas that this program prioritizes. A couple other kind of key eligibility requirements to note. Again, I mentioned that population criteria for us. I mentioned those focus areas that we really key in on. And just to note of who are our clients. So who are the eligible entities? They can be nonprofits, they can be municipalities. So libraries generally fall into one of those two categories for us, but we can also support community-based organizations that may not have one of those designations. And in terms of private business, we can again support those working lands folks, farm, food, and forest-based businesses. We also need a project to show that it's really ready to get off the ground and apply for funding, or at least begin that phase of looking for funding. And we'll get into a little bit more of those readiness components in the next slide. But one of the really key pieces that we do require is that wherever a project is based, that the municipality is on board and willing to provide their support and approval in the form of a pretty brief letter of support. But that just lets us know that this project has really kind of done the due diligence, and should they receive funding, it's really ready to take off and pursue that work. So as I mentioned, readiness, and I can't help but put in a pun because, we love wordplay and how things are spelled. But so again, so kind of some of those key pieces for us in terms of determining whether a project is really ready to access funding as well as utilize our ready services is whether that community engagement and planning process has already begun. We see a lot of folks that come to us with a lot of ideas on the table and looking at a lot of different opportunities, but haven't really come to a conclusion with, with their board or with their town or with their community around what their priority is to move forward with. So at that point, we'll connect with folks and, offer a lot of resources and referrals, but may say, hey, come back to us in a couple months when you've engaged in some of these more foundational processes, and then we can get going. Again, project clearly defined and really looking for that significant grant funding, generally for ready assistance to support with funding activities. We're looking at funding sources usually of about 50,000 or more, but there is some flexibility around that. And again, we want to make sure that folks are really well connected with other support organizations like the regional development corporations, the regional planning commission in their area, our partners at the USDA, our partners at the Preservation Trust if they're working on historic preservation, as well as potentially other parts of my organization. Vermont Housing and Conservation Board also has a wing that does conservation related programming related to historic preservation. So we often make a lot of connections there, and I'm happy to chat with folks offline more about that as well. And, there are a variety, Vermont Council on Rural Development, and we can talk more about what organizations might also be a great fit to help you with your project. And then as far as municipal support, again, we just talked about that letter of support is really key for us. It can be pretty brief, but is just really important way to demonstrate that the project is really ready to get moving in that direction toward getting funded. So just to walk through our process, again, this is going to go rather quickly. I'm happy to answer more questions and definitely meet with folks individually offline to go through more of your particular project. But in general, this is how our process goes to receive ready funding. So there'll be an intro meeting with me. I am the Ready program staff, and to walk through your project, what you're looking for, what resources could be a fit. And then at that time, we decide whether it makes sense to pursue connection with a few other resources or to get started with the Ready application. We have a pretty brief application online, which allows you to detail your project and contact information. And then again, we ask for that letter of support to then get you enrolled in the Ready process, which is a rolling application. So it's open all year round. And as long as we have funding available, we can kind of make awards rather quickly if folks are eligible and complete our application process. We also have a network of consultants that we manage and recruit each year that have a variety of skill sets in the community development space and the grant writing space. We can also accept consultants that a library or another type of client may already have selected that they want to work with. So again, we can talk about those cases more individually. But once that kind of matchmaking is made where the right consultant is picked for the project, the consultant and the client will work together to develop out a scope of work and the services that will be accomplished over a given timeline. We review that and make sure it aligns with our mission areas and the type of activities we can fund. And then once we approve that scope of work, our funding goes directly to that consultant for their services. And then basically when that project is wrapped up, we do require that the, whatever deliverables were developed during that time, that we get a copy of those. And we do send out a brief evaluation survey, but we try to keep it rather simple because these are small awards and we just want to keep things moving for folks. And just a note on kind of the amount of funding per project is usually, again, it's directly for those services. So it's really tied to that specific scope of work for technical assistance, but it ranges anywhere from about $1,000 up to about $7,500 per project. And if a library came to work with us and we were working on another project in that community at that same time, that's okay. Those could be two separate projects and two separate awards. So Again, that was rather quick, and I'm happy to answer more questions, but here's my contact information, and folks can be in touch with me directly. We also have a website there with lots of great information and some examples of past projects we've worked on. And there's an inquiry form there. So if you folks are kind of noodling on ideas now and thinking about wanting to have a conversation, you can fill out that quick inquiry form and we can set up a time to chat.
Thank you, Mariah. That was great. If people have questions, we have a few minutes now to ask Mariah questions. And also, we are recording this, so I know there's a lot of information. So you can go back and look at this and share it with other staff and trustees afterwards. So does anybody have any questions for Mariah before we move on? Feel free to unmute at this point. Okay, well, let's move on. Misty, it would be great if you could go on from here. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for putting this together. You've got a great group of folks here to tell you about some really great programs in Vermont. My name is Misty Sensigali. I am an area director with USDA Rural Development. So, for those of you who don't know, I'll just give you a quick kind of 30,000-foot view of who we are. USDA, when I first started working for rural development, I thought USDA only inspected meat and helped farms. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that USDA actually has 7 mission areas underneath its umbrella. One of them being rural development. Rural development is really the financial arm of USDA. We have loan, grant, and guarantee loan programs across 3 different program areas. We have business programs, community programs, and housing programs. So we have 60 plus programs underneath our umbrella right now. I certainly will not talk about all of them, but what I will say is that for those of you in a community, we can come into a community and, as I like to say, build it from underground up. We do water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure to building a new town hall, new libraries, rehabilitating town libraries, new fire trucks for communities, helping small businesses and communities, as well as single family home loans and repair loans. So we really have a lot of different programs that we have access to. So although I'm here to talk about one of them today, you probably have other needs in your community, and it is certainly okay to reach out if you have any questions about any of our programs that might be able to assist the community that you live in. And so today I'm going to talk about our community facilities program. I am going to put a slide up on the screen, and what I will do is I will send the larger presentation that actually walks through all of our programs to Joyce so she can send it out to all of you. But today I'm really only going to focus on one program, and that's our community facilities program. It is a direct loan and grant program. Let me get the slide up on the screen. Hold on one moment. Let me see here. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So our community facilities program, again, is a grant and a direct loan program. I'll quickly speak about the loan because that's most people do not want to look at the loan program, but we do offer a low interest, fixed rate loan program that you do have access to as either a nonprofit or a municipality. Those are the 2 entities that our community facilities program can loan or grant to. So if your library is run by a nonprofit or if your library is under the umbrella of your town, you both are eligible for this program. The loan program, the interest rate right now is 3.625%. It can go as long as a 30-year term, and there's no prepayment penalty, and there are no fees associated with this loan in terms of upfront cost. With our grant program, which is what everyone is usually interested in, I will say that We have a cap in terms of the population requirements at 20,000 for our community facility program. The grant is determined by the size of your community as well as your median household income. We currently use the census data from 2010, the American Community Survey. We will be switching to more recent data on October 1st. So although you may come to me today and ask me if your community is grant eligible, you may be at this time, but I am uncertain at this point because I do not have the new list with new percentages of what your community may become October 1st. So I would love to have any conversation with any of you about if you have a project, what we can possibly do, with the understanding that I may not be able to tell you what you could possibly be grant eligible for at this time. But we can certainly walk through the program, the requirements, and really try to determine what that might be. What I will say about our grant program is that we have a limited amount of money for the state of Vermont. And because of that, we limit the amount of grant funds usually at $50,000. So you as a community may be, let's say, 55% grant eligible. Let's just say the town of St. Johnsbury. The town of St. Johnsbury right now is 55% grant eligible. If you are a library within that and you're looking at grant funds, and let's say your project is $100,000, you may be eligible for up to $55,000, but we cap grants usually at 50 because we would like to get as many grant dollars out on the street across the state as possible. So I just put that out there because there are a lot of really big projects going on right now across the state. And sometimes when you're looking at projects that are millions of dollars, the $50,000 grant, which is always something, but can sometimes feel like a drop in the ocean versus a drop in the bucket. But those are the conversations that I would love to have and to try to assist you in seeing what else may be out there or that we can do for you. What I will say is our grant dollars and loan dollars can be used for anything that you can touch. So if you're making improvements to your library, if you're buying new equipment for your library, whether that be computers or desks or stacks to put the books, we certainly can come in and help do that. We can also do any type of heating, ventilation, solar panels, really anything that you can touch, we can fund. We cannot fund operationally, we can't fund that, but everything else is something that we can fund. And I won't go through the gory details of what the application is in terms of what is required. What I will say to you today is that if you think your project is something that you would like to come and have a conversation with me about, I strongly encourage you to do that. I'll walk you through what the application is. And our application deadline is December 15th. So you have time to get an application in. Working with Mariah, I often, if eligible, refer people to her if you're in the planning stages, because there are a lot of great things that she can do to help you prepare an application for funding, whether it be with our agency or others. So we have a great network here in Vermont, and we communicate early and often, and we really like to collaborate. So what I will say is it's not a one-stop shop. You won't come to me and if I say no, unfortunately it's not eligible and that's it. We usually all try to collaborate together to make sure that you find the sources for your project that you need, and that we all work together to try to make it the easiest process that we can for you all. So what I will say is, again, our community facilities program is open and available. I hope that those of you that did suffer from damage from this last storm we had, I really encourage you to come talk to me, because there may be disaster funds available later on this year in relation to this last storm that we had in July. And we will see if we can get something at least started and the communication started to see if we can get you in our system. I think that for me, again, the most important thing you can take away today is my contact information. And I also will put that in the chat. Joy will also send around my presentation. So again, Community Facilities Program, USDA Rural Development, we're here to help in any way that we can. And if anybody has any questions, I'll certainly try to answer them right now as well.
Thank you, Misty. That was great. Now, people, if you want to unmute and ask Misty questions, and again, you can use the chat, and you can use the chat at any time when people are presenting as well, and I'll keep an eye on that. But now feel free to raise your hand, or just, since no one's jumping to ask questions, you can just unmute and leap in if you'd like.
Can you hear me? This is Susan at the
Yeah.
Jacobwood Public Library.
Yes.
So I'm part of I'm a municipal library. I'm in a building that I share as a renter, even though it sounds weird because the library is part of the town, we still rent from the town. And so the
Not
town
uncommon.
will own the building. Well, they don't own it. The town owns the building. They run the building. And the basement flooded. And so far we've been pretty safe as far as our library safe goes because we plasticed ourselves off from the rest of the building. We use a side door. We've got 1 million devices going. But the basement was kind of the hub for the community. It's where we held all our programs that got very large. If we got rained out, we went in the gym and it's a wreck. So my fear is that with just FEMA funds, they're just going to replace what was already there. And it was already a substandard space. No one liked being in there. It was smelly. It was gross. It was horrible. So we always wanted to improve it. And so now we see this as a chance to, I mean, the whole place is torn apart. It's unusable right now and it stinks. And the remediation is taking place hopefully soon. It's a long story, not to bore you, but I do want to do more. And I don't know if it's something the municipality has to apply for a grant like this, or if it's something the library on behalf of the municipality can apply to fix up the gym. So it would be FEMA funds plus what other funds we can gather up.
Sure. And Susan, where are you from? Which town?
We're in Marshfield, which sustained an amazing amount of damage to roads and bridges. And so the building got neglected. When the flood happened, the building was not top priority. And the bridges, getting people out of their homes, was top priority.
Yes, and I'm really sorry I was just in Plainfield last night and Danville, and you all suffered. I mean, I'm really sorry for all that you've gone through. And what you
horrible,
endure.
Actually, thank you.
Yeah. What I will say is that you certainly, I agree with you 100%. My line has been build back better. So I'm not one to say that you should just build it back to exactly what it was before, especially if you incurred a lot of water in there. There's probably reasons why water came into the basement. So not only the internal structure or internal, from the studs in, do you want to make better, but you probably also want to look at outside of the building and see how stormwater and water moves around the building, all of which are eligible things that you can do with our money. So what I would certainly recommend, we can have a follow-up conversation about how our funds may be able to help do that. It would be the town would apply, but what we have found is that the town would be the applicant, although usually the folks with the library are the ones writing the application. And really, we look at the library's budget when it comes to financially what is available because we do underwriting, we do look at what money is available. Want to make sure that we are helping communities that don't have large sums of money sitting aside, which we know, especially in disasters, is not there. So it would be something where the town would be the applicant, but you as the library would most likely be doing some of that lifting to get the application in. But that's why we're here. And we have great folks like Mariah also who also help do some of that work. So we can certainly have that conversation, and it certainly would be something that our monies could be used for. We do not have certain federal funds have requirements that you can't use other federal funds to match them. We do not have that requirement. Usually I tell people it may be the other source of funds that has that requirement, but we do not. You can use, let's say, FEMA federal funds along with our federal funds in a project, and that is completely okay. So Susan, let's have if you want, I'll put my information in the chat, and let's try to have a follow-up conversation about how we can possibly come in and help you all.
Thank you so much. And just one last question. Would it help to have a committee of I was thinking of trying to start a capital campaign and getting a bunch of community members to form a committee, so that it's not just me speaking or the library speaking, so it's the community speaking. Would that help?
I don't know, Mariah, I always say yes. The more champions, the better for projects, I think. And Susan, you're one person, and you're going through a lot. So only being one person, I think it's always helpful to have more people to kind of spread the work out also, is my thought also. But
okay,
Mariah,
thank you
absolutely.
so much.
Yeah, I would
totally
agree. Totally agree. Building a team is really important. And I think having that community buy-in piece also in developing that kind of community structure, informing your community about what you're doing and why, because it's likely at some point down the road, there will need to be some match funding from the town that, and having that community buy-in early is really helpful. What I will say too is just as you start to develop those groups around a project, having kind of a main contact and assigning a couple key lead roles, so that way those folks can be the ones who are meeting with folks like myself, Misty, Tasha, other resources, and then can share that information back out with the group or invite us to your meetings. Like, that's always extremely helpful just in terms of efficiency of getting projects moving along. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. Thank you so much. I will invite you to our meetings for sure.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really glad that you were here today and that you asked that question. And, I'm really sorry for what's happened in your town. And I just want to say that from the Department of Libraries is always encouraging those kind of community committees. And so the more people you can get involved, it's going to help with this project and all of your other future advocacy and community engagement. So it sounds like a great idea. Are there any other questions for Misty before we move on? Okay, so Tasha, if you can share your part, that would be great now.
Great. Thanks so much, Joy and Mariah and Misty. It's been very interesting to hear your presentations. And we've been kind of flat out with the flooding here in Lamoille County. So I don't have slides. I did bring my books, kind of in solidarity. So I'm just going to first give an overview. The regional planning commissions, there are 11 around the state. I am the executive director of the Lamoille County Planning Commission. And in the absence of county government in the state, we're really the connection between state government and the communities. For very small communities, we often serve as staff. For those very small towns that don't have an administrator or a town manager, that means that we're quite often also writing the grants on behalf of the communities. And there's a couple of things I wanted to share. I think Mariah and Misty have both touched upon this issue of the fact that in most cases, the municipality is the applicant for grants. And I can't stress enough the importance of building a relationship with your local trustees or select board. We have seen scenarios where libraries and other community organizations have had great ideas, but they've gotten ahead of their community governance and the ideas haven't gone anywhere. I see Misty and Mariah nodding, excellent, on cue, right? But it is really, really important to forge those relationships and create those community connections, because great ideas quite often can get left on a shelf if they're not part of the priorities of the elected officials in the community. And if we're going to, for instance, help a library write a grant for something, we do that at the request of the legislative body of the community. Even if the library comes to us first, we'll say, go talk to your select board, have them let us know that this is important to us. So I really want to stress that. We don't have funds that we hand out, but I want to raise two things that are kind of imminent right now that I think would be super helpful. And anything I mention, websites, etc., I'll send to Joy and she can send around, because I'm not really adept at the chat thing either. So apologies. But the Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services has a grant fund that's called, I think, Building Community Facilities. The deadline for that is September 10th. And the maximum on that is $25,000. It requires a 1-to-1 match. What's really cool about that program is they're very flexible. They like creative ideas. You can go onto the BGS website and see what projects have been funded in the past, and library projects have certainly been funded. So if you have a short-term capital need or something, oh, looks, I see somebody's posted in the chat, you know, a project, and even something that you need to do quickly as a result of the flooding, this might be a good source for you. And you need to apply by September 10th, but there is a quick turnaround time. Both municipal and nonprofit libraries are eligible for that. And then the second thing, I believe Mariah had mentioned the other project at Buildings and General Services, which is MERP. It's a stupid acronym. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but it's for municipal energy improvements. And right now we're in the process where municipalities are requesting building assessments from BGS. And those requests can include the local municipal library. And then once there is an assessment of the building needs, the community can apply for up to $500,000 for building improvements for energy efficiency. And some of that money, if the building is not ADA compliant, can be used for ADA compliance as well. So I strongly encourage you to check this out. And I believe that this is the kind of program where, you know, the regional planning commissions can help you learn more of the details. I'm sure Mariah and her team can assist as well. To find out more about your local regional planning commission, you can go to vapta.org and find your town and find out who your local connections are. And I'm sure people will be happy to help. Other than that, it's really that, you know, we're here to help. And I'm very sorry for, you know, all of the libraries and the books that, and I've just lost my screen. Hold on. There you are. That have been damaged from this flooding, because it's so hard to see, you know, so many cultural things of value that have just been swept away and destroyed. So I'm happy to answer questions about those programs or other assistance we can provide.
Great, thank you, Tasha. So at this point, if anyone has questions for Tasha or Misty or Mariah, please feel free to raise your hand or write in the chat.
You must have questions. You're librarians. People come and ask you questions all the time. You gotta have your own.
I know. I've thought this one would be there would be so many questions that we might run out of time on this one, but
I will jump in quick, Joy, and say that and we, Tasha, Mariah, and I all run into this quite often, is that you have projects, you just don't know where to start with that project. You don't know, to go after funding. Do you do this first? I have worked with my local library as well as other libraries to really and Mariah and Tasha, we all do this, and a lot of times we do this together, is to just have that initial conversation and then help you almost timeline what needs to be done first and then what the steps are. So you may not even get to me or to a funder until step 5 or 6, but we really want you to be successful. So we will sit with you, have that initial conversation, and really walk through those steps, because that is sometimes the most paralyzing part of knowing you have a project, but just not knowing how to start it. So there is no conversation that's too early. And that's what I want to say, that you don't have to come to us having a project or knowing what you want to do. Just come to us to have a conversation. I really just wanted to throw that out there, because sometimes people wait and you don't have to.
So just to clarify, thank you so much for saying that about the
Yeah.
timeline, because I know that that's, we hear about that all the time. Is there a fee to have those initial meetings with any of you? Okay. I just wanted
Not
to make
at
sure that
all.
that was
No.
front and
Yeah.
center. Okay, great. Thank you. Jeanette, you are up.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Jeanette, a colleague of Joy's at the department. Thank you so much for doing this presentation. It's really helpful to know that you're all there to kind of help with, that you're there to help with the process as well. And I wanted the incorporated libraries to just really take note that some of these funds are available for you as well. We've experienced with the flood that FEMA does not make funding available for incorporated libraries. So it's been really hard to kind of see that we're dealing with two separate types of systems when we as a department are serving both types of libraries. So it was nice to hear that some of the things that you're offering, including the Building Communities grant, is available to incorporated. So just want to make sure that all of you incorporated libraries out there heard that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Beth Burchek from Hitchcock Memorial Museum and Library in Westfield. And I was just wondering on how much, if we are looking for a grant to help with building and construction, how much detail do you need? Do you need like an engineer level specifications, or would it be enough to say we need a new rug or new flooring with some estimates?
On that, under the BGS Building Communities grant, again, it's very flexible, and so you probably don't need a lot of detailed engineering. You need to be able to clearly state that you have your match available, and you also need to be ready to go. These grants are not for very early in the process to pay for engineering and design. They're to help you pay to, replace flooring or a door, or do, make something ADA accessible, but something that where you've got a large project and you just need a little extra money to have enough to go ahead, or you have a very discrete project that can be funded, $25,000 from the community and $25,000 from buildings and general services. So they're really looking for projects that are in the stage where they're good to go. And what's really important is to describe the need and how this will benefit the community. I'll also say they really kind of focus on geographic diversity. So that's always helpful to, you probably have a good chance, especially if you haven't got one of these before or haven't gotten one of these lately.
And
Thank you.
And go ahead, Mariah, you can go first.
Oh yeah, just a quick note. Thank you so much, Tasha. That is very helpful. And then just wanted to note for folks, and I believe you folks may have heard from some folks at the Vermont Community Development Program in the past, but that's a really great program through the state that also uses federal funds, but they're passed through the state, and they have a variety of grants for both like the implementation, the actual development work, accessibility work, as well as a planning grant level, which so if you're thinking, you're starting to get into some renovation project and it's looking like, with engineering and environmental review and those pieces is looking like, $25,000 to $60,000. That's where one of those grants is a really great place to just have plenty of funding to do all of that preliminary work to get you really well set up to apply for a large federal grant to actually do the implementation piece. And the READY program can support folks with those applications if they do need help with that. So just wanted to note that, but go ahead, Misty.
Oh, no, yeah, certainly. And we can also put the VCDP information, Vermont Community Development Planning, if just in case those of you don't know or haven't seen it, well, we can put that in the chat and give that to Joy also. I will say for our funds, for equipment, we just require 3 quotes. I mean, so for our applications, it's if you're looking for a new rug and you go on Amazon and you go on Wayfair and you go on some Home Depot, we just require 3 quotes. That's all we require with the application. We're not going to tell you which one you have to go with. So, in terms of equipment, it's easier than construction. Anything construction required, anything that you're going to do that is going to be construction will require a third-party consultant, will require either an engineer or an architect. And that's really for your own, I mean, it's a value add as we look, it's really for your own, I think that any architect or engineer is going to help you design either your system or that addition and really give you a good idea of the basis of design and the cost. And that's what we need for our application. Really we don't need a full final design. We just need a basis of design and the cost associated with that. And so I've worked with libraries before who had all of these ideas, and when they got an architect on board, they realized that the cost that they had in their head was not even close to what, unfortunately, what it was going to cost. But we do require a third-party consultant, and some of that can be paid for again by VCDP. Some of it through Mariah and her program sometimes can also help with some of those planning costs. So it is something where for our program, we require a little bit more. But again, we have an architect and an engineer on staff. So I look at it all value add and really for your own protection and to making sure that at the end of the day, you have the best build or the best product that you can get. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I just want to check with Bree, and Bree, I want to know if they've answered your questions, or do you still want more information? Because they touched on the topics you asked about.
Yeah, I know. I just was wondering, it's getting a little confusing with 3 people speaking at once. So just who is the person to contact about the energy and ADA assessments before you move forward on grant planning?
I'd be happy to speak with that. I would suggest that on the energy assessments, you reach out to your regional planning commission because we have been delegated by the state to assist the communities with this application. So I will send Joy the VAPTA website, which is the Association of RPCs, and you can find the contact information for your local folks. Where are you from? I could probably just tell you.
It's Westford, which is in Chittenden County.
Right. Yes, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And they have specific staff dedicated to helping the municipalities with this.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I just want to remind people too that this isn't obviously the only time we'll be talking about these things. I know it's a lot in 1 hour, and things that I know, at least for me, there some of the topics were things I knew maybe a little bit about, and then I'm learning more of the nuances of them now. And so sometimes with things like that, you might think of questions later. So, the presenters have generously, offered to share their contact information, and we, as I said, have recorded this. So, if you think of questions later, you will have chances to ask them.
Right. And if anyone has questions about their local regional planning commission, you can also reach out to me and I'll connect you with the right person.
And I did put that VAPTA link in the chat as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm also going to put a link to a short evaluation on this webinar, and it would be really helpful if people could fill that out. It always helps us figure out future CE that we plan. And since this one's a little bit different than some of the things we do. It'd be really great to have some feedback on this one. So.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Go ahead,
I'm
Susan.
Susan again. I'm sorry to take up so much time. I just have one quick question from the Jake at the Marshfield. And we have the side door we're using is substandard. It's falling apart. The side all around the door is rotting, but it's the only door we can use now because we're closed off from the rest of the building. So my question is, Tasha, can we use the grant you're talking about, since we have about $13,000? That we wanted to put towards fixing the side door and putting in a new landing and steps and a roof, because there's no roof over the landing, because we don't know how long we'll be using the side door. Do you know if your money can be paired for a project like that?
That sounds like something you could definitely apply for with the building communities grants. I can't guarantee who's going to be awarded in any particular, round of that, but that is something you could definitely apply for. And if you look on that website, it is not a very arduous process. And it sounds like a project where you have the town portion, some town portion that for match, and that you're ready to go. Of course, if it's something that you want to do quickly, the question is, do you want to wait for the results of the grant award? If it takes them a couple of months, you might think about applying for some other project.
Well, we can't even find a builder. I don't know if anyone else is having that problem.
Yeah. Everybody's having that problem. Yeah. I will just say quickly that I put because at least for our funds, they're not quick. Like, you're not gonna, unfortunately, you can't come and it's not a quick process. What I will say is I put the Vermont Community Foundation has done a lot, philanthropically around this flood. So like for Marshfield, for you all, it may be a worthwhile conversation with them to see if they might have any funds that would be able to help you do those, even though you've got to find that builder, just to do that quick, kind of that quick fix or that quick build on your building, so that it makes it accessible right now for people. I do think that there should be some funds out there to help you do that.
Thank you.
Great point, Misty. And I would also say that if you go to the Vermont Community Fund website, you can see some of the donations they've already made. For instance, in Lamoille County, we were thrilled to see a whole list of organizations and projects. And some of them included, immediate needs to particular organizations.
If I might also let you know that we've been in touch with the Vermont Community Foundation, and those of you who've had flood damage and you haven't heard from us about the VCF and the Vermont Public Library Foundation, get in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat and I can connect you up. But I think a lot of you have applied for both.
Jeanette, there's a question in the chat also about the BitLib grants and the bottleneck of contractors. That might be one for you.
Yeah, we just had a grant meeting yesterday and talked about how we can best solve that, and we don't have an answer, honestly. This is something the state is dealing with. The governor mentioned it in his latest press conference, and I think the best we can do is be as flexible as possible and push the deadlines out as much as we can within the framework of the federal requirements. One of the grants, I think the HUD grant, gives us more time. It's way out. The Treasury grant is a little bit tighter of a turnaround. So I think we were talking about it yesterday, and this is not official yet. It was just a brainstorm. We were thinking, well, maybe we do try to get the Treasury funds out more quickly if people are shovel ready and have workers, contractors standing by, and then allow the other ones to have the HUD money to have a little bit more time. So we're struggling with it as well, and it's a discussion, and I'm curious to see what other grantors are doing as well. So it's good to have this connection too. Ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and what I'll quickly say is that it's a ongoing conversation at all levels with all of that money that has been out the door, not just, for every agency that has these funds available and has to spend them. And what we have been saying is there's such a strong case that everybody can make at this point, even to the federal government, whether we Treasury or not, that I can't say for sure, but I would not be surprised if they do allow some flexibility with that, because it is something where there are contractors unavailable and not available for at least a year. So I would just say don't lose hope in terms of, if you get money and you're working your hardest to spend it, and there's just believe that. I think the federal government, that we will acknowledge it, and we will see the need, and most likely, I would say, probably push it out a little bit. So.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you again. This has been so informative, and it's so timely. It was timely before, when we set it up, picked this date a couple of months ago, and then who knew it would be even more timely and urgent. So thanks everybody for coming, and thank you so much to all the presenters. And the recording will be on the Department of Libraries website, see recorded webinars page, and also on Niche Academy. So look for it there. It sometimes takes us a couple days to get it up there, but it will be there with the slides. And I will collect all the links from the chat and send them out to people as well. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Joy. It's great to see you guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.